I was a pilot once, in the days when planes were small and unreliable, and the desert was still large enough to lose a man in for weeks. When I was 32 years old, my engine failed above a stretch of the Sahara, and I set the plane down as gently as I could on the sand. And I understood, in the small hour after I climbed out into the silence, that I was going to have to repair the engine myself, and that I had water for perhaps a week if I was careful, and that no one was going to come for me. I slept beside the plane that first night. I woke at dawn with a small, serious voice above my head that said, politely and clearly, "Please, sir, would you draw me a sheep?" I sat up. The sun was not yet fully in the sky. Beside me on the sand stood a boy of perhaps 6 or 7, with pale hair and a small green coat and eyes that held more than his small face should have been able to hold. He was very calm. He was, in fact, calmer than any boy who had ever appeared alone in the middle of a desert had any right to be. He repeated his request politely. "Please, would you draw me a sheep?" I did not know where he had come from. I did not know how he had reached me. But he asked so warmly, and my situation was so strange that I took a scrap of paper from my pocket and tried to draw him a sheep. I was not a good artist. My first sheep looked, he told me kindly, unwell. My second looked old. My third, he said, was a ram. Finally, I drew a small square box with 3 small holes in the top and told him the sheep was inside, and he studied the box for a long moment and said, in a voice full of quiet pleasure, "Yes, that is exactly the sheep I wanted." It was thus that I met the small traveler. Over the following days, while I worked on my broken engine, he told me in small pieces where he had come from. He said he had lived, all his life, on a small round world no bigger than a house, which had 3 small volcanoes and a single flower he had come to love. The flower was proud and difficult. She had 4 thorns and used them liberally. She said things that hurt him sometimes. He had one morning decided that he needed to see other worlds to understand her better. He had left. He had asked a flock of migrating birds to carry him. Before he came to my desert, he told me, he had visited 6 small planets, each with only one person on it. On the first, he met a king who wore a long red robe and sat on a throne that took up most of his small world. The king was very kind. He was also, the small traveler said, slightly sad. He had no subjects. He commanded the stars and the sun to do what they already did, so that he could say he had commanded it. He wanted the small traveler to stay and be his ambassador. The small traveler thanked him and left. On the second, he met a man in a small feathered hat who lived alone on a small round rock and who wanted more than anything to be admired. He asked the small traveler to admire him. The small traveler admired him for a little while. The man was so delighted that the small traveler understood, quickly, that this was a game that would never end, and he left. On the third, he met a man who was drinking. The small traveler asked him why he was drinking. The man said, "So that I can forget." The small traveler asked, "Forget what?" The man said, "So that I can forget how ashamed I am." The small traveler asked, "Ashamed of what?" The man said, "Ashamed of drinking." The small traveler left that planet very quickly and thought about the man for a long time afterwards. On the fourth, he met a businessman who was counting stars. The businessman said the stars belonged to him because he had thought of counting them first. The small traveler asked him what he did with the stars. The businessman said, "I count them and put the number in a bank." The small traveler told him gently that on his own small planet, when he owned something, he watered it and cared for it, and it was better for his owning it. But that this man's owning of the stars did not help the stars in any way. The businessman looked at him, blinking, and continued counting. The small traveler left. On the fifth, he met a man who lit a lamp on a small planet that turned very quickly once a minute. The lamplighter lit the lamp when the world grew dark. He put it out when the world grew light. Because the world turned so fast, he was doing this all the time, and he was very tired. The small traveler thought this man was, of all the men he had met so far, the only one doing something useful, even if his work had grown too fast for him. The small traveler was sad to leave him. On the sixth, he met an old man with a beard who wrote large books about mountains and rivers and cities. The small traveler asked whether the old man had ever visited any of these places. The old man said, "No, that is not my job. Explorers visit, I only record." The small traveler mentioned his own flower and asked whether it should be recorded. The old man said, "No, flowers are ephemeral. We do not record what fades." The small traveler was quiet for a long time after that. It was the first moment, he told me later, that he began to feel truly homesick. The sixth planet's geographer had suggested he visit Earth, so Earth was where he had come. He landed, he said, in a large empty place that looked like my desert, though far from where I had crashed. The first thing he met was a snake, thin and gold in the sand, who spoke in small, careful sentences. The snake told him, when the day came that he wished to return home, she could send him back with a single small bite. He thanked her and walked on. He walked for many days. He climbed a mountain and found only echoes. He crossed a plain. Then, one afternoon, he came upon a garden of 5,000 roses, all of them exactly like the one he had left on his small planet. He sat down and wept. He had thought until that moment that his flower was the only one of her kind in the universe. Now he understood that she was one of many, and that he was, therefore, not the small, important boy he had believed himself to be. That was when he met the fox. The fox was small and orange and sat on the edge of the garden watching him. The small traveler asked whether the fox would play with him. The fox said, "I cannot play with you. I have not been tamed." The small traveler asked what tamed meant. The fox said, "Tamed means we create ties. Right now, you are only a boy to me, exactly like 100,000 other boys, and I am only a fox to you, exactly like 100,000 other foxes. But if you tame me, we shall need each other. You will be for me the only boy in the world, and I will be for you the only fox." The small traveler and the fox spent many quiet days together. The fox taught him to visit at the same time each day, so that the fox's heart could learn to expect him. When it was almost time to say goodbye, the small traveler wept again. The fox said, "Do not be sad. I have gained something. I have gained the color of the wheat fields, because your hair is the color of the wheat, and I will think of you every time the wind moves through them." Before they parted, the fox told him a small secret. The fox said, "One sees clearly only with the heart. What is truly important is invisible to the eye." And then the fox said, "The time you spent on your flower is what makes your flower so important. You are responsible for what you have tamed. You are responsible for your rose." The small traveler understood then that his flower was not one of 5,000 at all. She was the only one, because he had cared for her. He told me all of this over the 8 days it took me to repair my engine. On the 9th day, when my engine was finally fixed, he came to me at sunset and told me gently that his year on Earth was ending, and that he had arranged with the snake to be sent home that evening. I did not want him to go. I begged him to stay. He said he could not carry his body back with him, only his small, warm self, and that the snake's bite would look from the outside like something sad, but that it would not be sad, and that I should not be frightened by what I saw. I went with him to the small wall at the edge of the desert where the snake was waiting. He hugged me for a long moment. He asked me to look up at the stars and to remember that his small planet was one of them, and that his laughter would live in whichever star I chose to look at forever. Then the snake did what she had promised, and my small friend fell without a sound onto the sand. His body was not there in the morning. I have flown home. I have not forgotten. I look up at the stars every night. Sometimes I laugh because I can hear him laughing among them. Sometimes I worry because I never drew a collar for the sheep, and I hope quietly that the sheep has not eaten his flower. If any of you one day cross a desert and meet a small boy with pale hair and eyes too large for his small face, who laughs warmly and refuses to answer certain questions, please send me word. He was, I believe,